Welcome to another Founder Wisdom Pod with Bill Lennan. Bill is founder at 40% Better. 40% Better is all about employee engagement, psychological safety, and team performance. So we're going to talk about mental health today, leadership, vulnerability, working with a heart. Bill, welcome to the pod. Tell me a bit more about yourself and 40% Better.
Yeah, so I've been running software teams for 20 plus years here in Silicon Valley. And the interesting pattern is that my teams consistently were doing things people said is impossible. My work has helped everybody from local small businesses to Google and Walmart. And in each of those environments, we kept having this experience of my team's doing great things that people were thinking we couldn't do. And then my peers and executives coming to me and going, how did you do that? And for a lot of years, I didn't know how to explain it. I didn't know how to articulate what it was I was doing. And then my now partner, 5 years ago, wanted to interview me about it. And at the end of the conversation, she said, "Oh, I know exactly what you're doing. You're using a bunch of skills for performance that typically we teach people in a mental health setting to get them out of depression, anxiety, or PTSD and a variety of other mental health conditions." And that turned into me learning a bunch about her day-to-day work in a clinical setting, but also how to reverse engineer all the things I was doing that individually are very, very small steps, little tiny pieces, but when you put them all together, it makes a huge difference in team performance.
Right. And you started a couple of companies before that. It's funny because I saw in your job experience section on LinkedIn, Odesk. So that's what Upwork was called back in these days. I remember using Odesk as well. So that's interesting. Red Rope Social, you started postmodern apprenticeship, so co-founder, diversity evangelist. So that's quite interesting. And yeah, in the software world, most often it's about IQ. Working in teams is very hard, and that's EQ. So, what are you seeing nowadays in people that work in software? What challenges do they face, and how do you help solve these?
Of course, yeah. So the first problem, which is common across every industry, this is a global lack of employee engagement, and people talk about this all the time, and it's kind of this 20,000, 30,000 foot view perspective that the employees just aren't excited about working for the company and helping the company to move forward. They're lacking a sense of ownership in outcomes, and they aren't tied to the company mission. And so the thing that I started focusing on when I started building my first team was the opposite of that. How do I get my team to be as engaged as possible in everything we're doing? How do I get them to not only be high performing, but really happy about it all at the same time? And to me, it was a slow process. It felt like, but really what was happening was the Japanese Kaizen model of get 1% better every day. And 1% better every day doesn't sound like very much until you start looking at it over the long run. And you go, well, after a year, that's 200% better, even at the most fundamentally basic math, with 200 work days out of the year. And so when you look at it for that long view, what's possible? And so I always focused on that fundamental problem of getting people really engaged, getting people out of their self-imposed shells. And a lot of people in the tech world are shy introverts. I used to be a super shy introvert. I struggled with social anxiety for decades. And I was able to get myself out of that place. And now I talk to strangers all the time and do things like podcasts. But I've along the process, I've figured out how to reverse engineer exactly what I did so that I can help everybody else on my team be comfortable and feel safe as a contributor to the team's success and to our conversations.
What about mental health in founders? What do you see in them, and the loneliness of the journey, not having much people to talk to.
Yeah, so that's a real problem. And sadly, it's not just in entrepreneur founders feeling lonely. It's like in Google, right? When I worked at Google, there was a lot of people that I ran across that sat in a cube all day long and didn't talk to anybody. And despite the fact that they're surrounded by thousands of coworkers, they're not in conversation. And I saw the same thing in them that I saw in myself when I started in tech, which was this fear of talking to people and not feeling comfortable and relaxed and having fun with it. And for me, whether you're an entrepreneur, you're an entrepreneur, or you're an employee, being able to get yourself out of that place, it is a game changer for mental health, right? My outlook on life started improving when I started to proactively work on my social anxiety and my shyness and my unwillingness, my fear of talking with strangers, right? And so when I started working on that, within literally 2 weeks, I got over my first hurdle, and I was like, "Holy cow, this actually works! What's the next piece?" And I did it in looking back, it's very, very small increments. And I've told people about my journey, and they've been like, "That just seems so trivial." And yes, it seems trivial, but people oftentimes will take on a goal that's way too big for them. And so they never actually make those steps forward. They'll say, "I want to run a marathon," but they don't break down, "Oh, wait a minute, to run a marathon, I have to start by running 1 mile. And I need to run 1 mile every day for a week. And then the next week, it's going to be 2 miles, except for Saturday, I'm going to go 5, right? Like, there's a process for getting from not running to running a marathon. It's not just walk out the door and go run 26 miles, right? And so one of the big things that I realize, and this applies across the board, entrepreneurs, employees, whatever it is, if you start doing things in little tiny pieces and they're so small they seem almost inconsequential, now you can actually achieve. Now you can actually have success. And that, mental health, one of the things that I've seen over and over again with people struggling, and my partner who works in a clinical environment validates this over and over again, is that we struggle with our mental health because we have a desire for something we want to do, but we have no idea how to achieve it. And we don't have a roadmap in front of us that says, here's where you start, right? Here's step 1, step 2, step 3, and there's a progression, right? And once you do that, once you realize that that's possible and you start down the path, your struggles go away. And there's decades of clinical proof around this now with people who've, depression, anxiety, borderline personality disorder, PTSD, all that stuff, where people learn skills, they practice skills on a daily basis. They learn how to consistently use those skills, those problems go away. My social anxiety went away because I was doing that. I started learning skills. I started practicing skills every day. Daily practice gets us to be competent, and it gets us to then be masterful. And now things aren't scary anymore, right? And that's been everything I've ever done in my whole tech career, as well as everything else I've ever done. That's actually been the process.
Social anxiety, it's interesting because I asked myself, like, what is social anxiety? Is it like a piece of data that first entered your brain, someone that told you like you're not capable or you sound like an idiot, or that you heard that on a movie, for example, that piece of data entered your brain and was repeated thousands of times, reinforced, and eventually it forged a connection in your brain telling, I'm not good at speaking to others. Is that what mental disease is? Is it the same for depression, in which you constantly repeat yourself that this is not worthwhile, this is so depressing, and I'm just more comfortable in my bed, not moving the full day, that I will get eaten out there? Is that what mental disease is? Just like repetition over repetition?
Most of the time, yes, it is a repetition. And it's a repetition of some kind of, um, on the one hand, self-limiting belief, and cognitive behavior therapy is all about self-limiting beliefs, right? That's what that whole game is, really, is to help people understand their self-limiting beliefs and give them data that counteracts it, right? But then the other part is really going and doing the thing and stacking up a bunch of wins to prove to yourself, oh, I am good at this thing. Like, you know, when I started down the path of getting over my social anxiety, for me, the very first thing was, and it sounds crazy a little bit, but I was afraid to start conversations because I didn't think that I could start a conversation with someone. And I was an adult, like I was in my late 30s. I'd had lots of conversations, but I still had this nagging fear. And so I wouldn't network and I wouldn't talk with people. And when I started just this fundamental of starting conversations in Starbucks with the barista, it's a 2-minute time block, right? And it seemed so inconsequential when I first came up with this with a friend of mine, but it seemed inconsequential. But then when I went to go do it the very first time, I froze and I couldn't do it. Like I was so scared in the moment. And I walked into Starbucks, ordered coffee, did not start a conversation, and walked back out. And then the next day, I'm like, okay, I'm going to do it this time. I'm going to actually say the script of how's your day going, right? Which just seems so trivial, but in the moment, I was sweating bullets. I'm sure my voice was cracking, and I did it. They said whatever they said. I have no idea what they said. I said thank you, and then I walked out the door and was like, oh my god, I did that once. That's it, right? And I did that every day for the next 2 weeks. And at the end of 2 weeks, I realized, holy cow, this is actually easy now. What's next, right? I've now taught that same process to dozens of people. Both of my kids had struggles in school when they coming out of COVID. One of them was going into high school and was going into college, and both of them were really struggling going on campus. I taught them the exact same process. It took them less than a week to get really comfortable. I'm a slow learner, I think, at times. But now, I've got a whole stack that took me from social anxiety to now I really love public speaking. And it's just this stack of learning skills, practicing those skills, and proving to myself I've got the data to back up that I can do this over and over again, and I can do it easily, and it's not really hard, and people don't laugh at me. Or if they do laugh, it's because I'm trying to be funny. And so I'm getting that reaction out of people, right? It's like it's being in control of the situation.
It's very empowering to know that, you can bring yourself down to mental diseases by just repeating some stuff, but you can also bring yourself to unequaled heights as an
Right.
individual by just repeating greatness. It's just tough to first learn that as an OS, as a mental system, and possibly to implement that. Because when you repeated yourself so much BS over the years, you don't even want to try anything, you're not experimental, you're completely closed. So, but yeah, I mean, it's anything you
Yeah.
want in this life you can create, you obviously need to be patient, right? Because 1% better daily doesn't come overnight, the major success, but we live in that type of world.
Right. Right. And for me, it's about being persistent and practice. And I think I grew up semi-competitively. And so I'm used to the idea of it's going to take a lot of reps to get better. If I wanted to take 2 seconds off my time in a race, I knew I couldn't do that in one day, right? It was going to take work and effort and stroke technique and cardiovascular and improving my physical strength, pain tolerance, all that stuff, right? None of that comes overnight. And so for me, the idea that it's a practice and I've got to keep doing it. And I'm going to be there every day, or I'm going to be there twice a day. But I also know from experience what's possible with that level of practice. You know, when I started surfing, all my friends were really good at it and I wasn't. And so I was committed. I was going to get in the water as many days a week as I possibly could. And I was going to learn and practice. And I got better than my friends were. And then I was looking for other role models that were better than me that I could learn from. Right. But I think too often what happens is people have a goal. They say, I want to be whatever it is. Right. And they don't recognize that the people that are doing that thing did all the baby steps that got them to that level of success. And everybody has to follow the same path, right? Everybody has to, and the you know, some people might move through parts of the path faster than others. And that's great for them, right? Because they're coming to this with something that helps them in that arena. Some people are going to be slower. You know, just the fact that you're on the path is what's important, not that you hit that goal. I tend to think of building systems in my life and habits that are where a goal is just a stepping stone, right? I use goals as stepping stones to build habits out because I see the ROI of those habits as much more valuable.
Right. What legacy do you want to leave to your son?
I want my kids to really know that they can do anything they want to, and it takes work. Like that's it. It just takes work. Both of my kids grew up playing water polo, and both of them, when they started, had a really hard time treading water. And when they started, they both had a couple of years of competitive swimming. We're a very aquatic family, so they were very comfortable in the water. But the coordination of egg beater, of treading water in water polo, is it doesn't come naturally. And both of them, first couple of days, were like, I can't do this treading water thing. This is like, I can't do it. And yet they stuck with it. And I remind them now on a regular basis that they forgot about treading water after 2 weeks because their body had automated it, right? And they were doing the coordination. And even though on day one it was insanely hard, by day 14, it was just a habit, right? And that's everything in life is like that. You just need to break it down into small enough pieces that you can move through the achievement process to get there, to get to where you want to be, right? At 14 days, they could tread water, but they couldn't shoot the ball because they couldn't tread water hard enough to get their bodies up out of the water high enough to really get the power into the shot. So that was another level, right? And to be able to abstract what they learned from there into everything else in life, that's one of the big goals for me. And they seem to be doing it pretty well.
There you go. You gain a lot of wisdom from your cold exposure and plunges. Tell us about that.
Yeah. That's it. So partly because of competitive swimming, I grew up learning that being uncomfortable is the price of success, right? It's a voluntary discomfort. And a cold plunge is just another kind of voluntary discomfort that helps us be successful. One of the things that I've noticed, and there's a bunch of geeky neuroscience behind this, is that every time I go jump in the cold plunge, I get this boost to brain chemicals. My neurochemistry changes, and it's easier to focus. And for me, that's a huge win, right? Because I can get up in the morning, I don't feel super with it. I get a cup of coffee, and I'm like, okay, time to go get cold. And that is knowing that I have that tool available makes it really easy for me on a day-to-day basis to be confident that I can just wake up, have a process, I've got a system, and away we go. And it also is a reminder to me that doing hard things is completely achievable, right? Anything that's hard, I can just go do because I've got this this track record of proof that I can do hard things. And so the fact that it's hard is a data point. And it's only hard until I've done it enough times that it becomes a habit.
What are your top priorities this year, Bill?
First thing is marketing. Marketing 40PB is a big one because we're brand new. The idea has been in the back of my head for a lot of years. I didn't really start doing it until 6 months ago, when we made a conscious decision for me to actually build 40% better. And I've, the very beginning was, okay, how am I going to teach people this stuff? Right. And I built my first version of the curriculum. And then was like, nope, that's not good enough. I need to change it. It's kind of that the education and training creators curse is you make the first one and it's just a data point. You did the first one, you look at it and you're like, okay, that's not nearly good enough. I think I'm on version 7 right now. I've run 2 cohorts through 2 beta groups. And so now we're ready to get, everybody else in the world through the program. This is a combination of training and coaching, but really for this year, it's all about marketing and getting the word out that good leadership is a consistent, repeatable process, and it's a system, and anybody can do it. It's like learning math. You just need to learn the stack, right? And it seems to me that nobody's caught on to that. And I think it's partly because no one's had the benefit of reverse engineering leadership like I have because of my partner's background.
The partner's the moat. Bill,
What's that?
The partner is the moat.
Right.
The moat, the weapon, the secret weapon. Bill, where can people find out more about you?
Our website is 40pb.com, number 40, and then pb.com. I got very lucky and found a 4-character domain name that I wasn't expecting to have be available, but I was very pleased about it. My email is easy. It's bill@40pb.com. And that's the easiest thing. Anybody who's curious, by all means, I'm happy to talk about this stuff with folks, hear about that situation, and really bring it into people's companies so that they can get the results out of their teams that they want, both from a productivity perspective as well as just having happy teams that enjoy coming to work every day.